This little guy, I love this little guy. This little guy just makes me so happy. I wanted to create a gummy bear for so long. Now, I am not a 3D artist by any means, and I have much respect for the people who do create beautiful sculpted tumblers from a piece of clay. Bow down. Now, when I saw 3D Undercover make this authentic little gummy bear, I knew that I wanted to create something just happy and bubbly and just full of love. When June rolled around, I said, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make a pride bear. All right, so today I'm gonna be working on this 3D print from 3D Undercover. It's the Gummy Bear 20-ounce sleeve. It's super cute. It comes in 2 different sizes. This is the 20-ounce. There is a 30-ounce out there. I love the 3D sleeves because it's made of very light material and cuts out the frustration of sculpting and baking and all of that. You know, I can sculpt a little bit, but to sculpt an entire bear onto a cup, come on now. I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. So sleeves, it is for me. Let's get started. First things first, we gotta prep this thing, okay? Because this is a 3D print, you're gonna see little tiny lines on it. I wanna take those out, and I also wanna make sure that I have a very white base down on my bear first. Because when we put down our inks, it's gonna look a little funny. They're gonna start to settle into the little fine lines and grooves, and we don't want that. So we're gonna put down a nice thick layer of some white paint. What I'm using here is one of my whites from my metal priming paint line. I'll go ahead and I will link all materials down at the bottom. So if I forget to mention where, when, what, don't worry, I'll put it all down there in the bottom. So you're gonna see me kind of taking a big fat fluffy makeup brush with lots of my white paint, and I'm just gonna be stippling it on there. I want it nice and thick. We want to make sure that these micro lines and these fine lines are filled in. So I'm gonna be very generous with my paint, and I'm gonna just pounce it on in there. This paint dries very fast, so 1 or 2 coats you can do pretty quickly. Make sure you're getting in all those little fine, small details and crevices. We wanna make sure that this entire guy is covered. We've already done about 2 coats of this guy, and you can still see that there's still some fine lines that are visible. That's okay. We're gonna put down our Flynn Sisters Fast Cure. This is a thicker epoxy, so this is gonna be perfect. I'm gonna take a gloved hand, and I'm going to generously apply this, okay? And we're gonna just cover the entire bear with the Fast Cure. We want the epoxy to give us a nice level surface. So that way when we put our inks down, it doesn't settle into the grooves of the bear. And then you have these little lines of dark and then light and dark and light and dark and light. So we wanna make sure that we seal it. I wanna make sure that this is done thick and fast. So I'm gonna put my Fast Cure on here because the Fast Cure is a thicker formula. And once you are done with your coat, make sure you put him on your turner, or you can set him upside down. I knew that this epoxy was gonna cure very fast, so I had no problem just letting him hang upside down. So that's what I did. I put him on a foam football, put him on a little stand, and I sat him to the side. Okay, we're back the next day and our bear is nice and cured. But what I do wanna do now at this point is I wanna attach my handle. This is a heart handle from Tumbler Shields. They have a wide selection of handles. I knew that I wanted to put some kind of handle on this bear because sleeves can be big and bulky, and the last thing you want to do is drop your tumbler. Oh, that's like my fear. I've never dropped a tumbler, knock on wood, and I don't want to start, okay? So let's put a handle on there. There's several different ways on how to add a handle to a tumbler. One of my favorite ways to do that is to put some epoxy sculpt. You kind of take part of your A and part of your B and mush it together, just like you're playing with Play-Doh. Make sure it's nice and blended. And then I stick it on the little posts and I put it on my surface, and then I can sculpt it to where it looks like it's molded into the sleeve. That's how I like to do it. Some people like to use regular glue or liquid fusion or whatever. I like to make sure that it's really on there because this epoxy sculpt is so strong. The bond, once it's bonded and once it's cured, it's there. Like, you ain't getting it off. It's cemented. Once I've made my little patty of epoxy sculpt, I kind of flatten it out and I stick it on there. And then to seal, I'm gonna put a little bit of UV epoxy just to give it that sealed security. We'll come back after it's cured the next day, and then we'll get going. Okay, we're back the next day. We have our bear nice and sealed. We have our handle applied. Now it's time to get some color on our little guy. I'm so excited for this part. We're gonna take our shade inks and we are going to make a nice little rainbow effect. We're gonna start from the top of the head all the way down to the booty of this guy in the shades of the rainbow. The colors that we're going to be using from the line, we have our red, Take a Bow, our orange, Harvest Moon, yellow, Crescent Moon, green, Paper Chaser, blue, Blue Monday, purple, Lil Susie, and our pink is our Boom Boom. All right, so there's a couple of different ways on how you can apply inks to a surface. You can do it with a brush, you can do it with a makeup sponge, you can drop them directly on. I mean, there's no right or wrong way. The main thing that I always recommend to people is just to really understand how the inks work. Alcohol inks are very fast drying. So you got to work fast or you have to know how to slow it down. Knowing how it's going to behave, that will determine the effect and the success that you get from these alcohol inks. This is how I kind of started in the industry. I fell in love with just the way that they behaved and the effects and the look and all of it. I created my own line when I first started my brand. I put a lot of time into selecting the formulas and testing products. And these are the inks that made me so proud when I put my name on it. So here we go. Put some gloves on, make sure you get some cups to drop some of your inks on because I don't recommend you putting the ink directly from the bottle down onto your bear. I would put a few drops in a cup to the side. That way you can control how much you're picking up with your sponge. And we don't want to mix these colors, so we're gonna have to get a sponge for every single one of them. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 sponges, all right. 7 sponges it is. And like I said, these are gonna dry very quickly. So I wouldn't drop your inks all out at once. I would do it one at a time because by the time you get to your third ink, it's gonna be completely dry. Let's start off with our red. And we're gonna pounce, 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 pounce. That's all we're gonna do. We're gonna pick up and then we're gonna directly apply it. Now start small, okay? You don't wanna like take too big of a bite or cover too much of a surface of your bear. I would start very, very thin and then we're gonna layer those as we go. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that it will dry, but once you start to touch it with more alcohol, like another ink or if you spray it, it will reactivate. And then your inks are gonna start to change color. So that's just something just to keep in mind. So the next color that we're gonna do is gonna be the orange. Keep in mind what colors you're gonna get when you mix a red and an orange together. You know, you don't want that to come off on your bear. You wanna make sure that there is some, like you want it to blend, but you also want it to be defined. You want a defined rainbow and you want to have a red where there's supposed to be a red and you want to have an orange where there's supposed to be an orange. So just keep that in mind when you're layering your inks because once you lay it down and they start to bleed together, that's when you're going to get the overlap and you're going to get the different colors. Once you're done and you have your bear completely coated, step back and take a look and see how the ink sort of dried. If you have to go back and you have to pounce some more with those inks, feel free to do so. If you want to blend, if you don't like having those defined lines, you can always take a little bit of some, a few drops of alcohol and you can dilute that ink and you can pounce back on there because alcohol is going to reactivate that ink. So you can see me, I'm going back and I'm just kind of like blending, making my colors more vibrant. The more you layer these colors, the brighter it's going to be. So that first inking layer might be a little pale. Don't be scared to go back and just re-ink again. Just make sure that if you don't want your colors to touch, you don't sort of over ink, okay? Keep in mind that you want to stay within those colors. Now I'm kind of looking at it and I'm thinking, I like it, but I would like it more if it was kind of like an acid wash. So let's go ahead, let's grab a little bit of alcohol and let's spritz it. Now, don't spritz it very close to your bear. Spritz it far away because even the slightest touch of alcohol, like the mist, is going to cause it to reactivate. If you spray too close to your bear and you put too much alcohol on there, it's gonna run, okay? You don't want a wet bear. You don't want it because then your colors are gonna start to run. I think I had my spray bottle like 3 feet away from my bear when I missed it. And I got those little cells right there, okay? That's what you want to do. Once you have your alcohol ink looking like you want it to look, and it's nice and it's perfect and you don't want to mess with it anymore, because I can mess with this all day. Sooner or later, you got to walk away from it. Put it down and let it dry. Don't seal it right away, okay? Because it's fresh. You want it to just dry completely. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to let him sit, and then we'll come back and we'll seal him. It's been a few days and our ink is good to go. Now, I don't have to do too thick of a coat, because all I want to do is just make sure that these colors are sealed, and we're going to put our second coat of epoxy just to trap in and protect these colors. I'll be using my Fast Cure epoxy again, so we don't have to worry about putting this on a turner. And I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of glitter just to give it a little bit of shine. You know, glitter makes everything better. So we have it nice and wet with our epoxy, sprinkle some glitter, and then we're going to let him hang upside down. Okay? All right. Now, to go with the theme of the rainbow, I'm going to do kind of like an opaly bluish vinyl wrap on the tumbler that we're going to be putting down in here. So I'm grabbing this opal vinyl from Tech Wrap, and I'm going to be wrapping my 20-ounce skinny. And I'm only going to be wrapping just the top portion of it, so that way we don't have to waste too much of it. There's no point in me doing the entire tumbler, just the part that's going to be exposed. You can see here that I'm kind of looking at the bottom of this tumbler, trying to gauge how much space I want. I'm thinking I want about like an inch down here at the bottom, because I want to fill this with sprinkles and gummy bears and beads and all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to give myself about an inch clearance down here at the bottom. I say I will wrap about half of the tumbler. I'm pretty comfortable with that. And it doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to be covered. I'm going to put a drip on this. So let's just go ahead and let's just trim off the edge. Give it a nice little rim right here, so that way our epoxy has something to grip onto. And then, I'm not even gonna really worry about the seam. Here's how I do my drips. Drips are kind of tricky. I really like adding drips because it really gives it a very playful, candied look. They're super cute and they're just fun. I'm gonna put a white drip on here, and I wanna put some rainbow sprinkles on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my Flynn Sisters Fast Cure, and I'm going to add a little bit of my white alcohol ink, because I want a little bit of alcohol in there just to kind of loosen it up and to kill some of the bubbles. That's my theory. I feel that if I put a little bit of alcohol in my epoxy, it's going to kill the bubbles. I don't know if that works. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a scientist. It makes me feel better. And then I'm going to put a few drops of some white dye as well. I don't want to put too much white dye because it'll gunk it up. Again, this is Fast Cure epoxy, and it can go really fast and flash cure on you, or it could take all day long. I mean, I don't know. We're going to see how this goes. Every time I do a drip, sometimes I have to cross my fingers. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, well, then we do it all over again, okay? All right, while he's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and measure my cup and put the stuffing down in there. I've never seen anybody do this, but it seemed like a good idea. There was a lot of void space between the sleeve and the tumbler. So what I thought I could do, I MacGyvered this thing. I said, I'm gonna put a little bit of cardboard right here in the midsection of this tumbler, and I'm gonna see if it fits down in there and it gives me that filler. So that way I could have that space at the bottom. And whoa, Nelly, it fit. It was perfect. It was a perfect fit. It was meant to be. So here's what it looks like on the bottom. And I want to make sure that none of my sprinkles or my glitter or my resin are going to fall out and drip out the top of it. So I'm just going to cover this bottom spot right here and these little holes and voids and stuff with some tape. So that way, when I do drop my sprinkles down in there, I keep them all in, okay? I'm going to seal this with some UV resin. I'll be right back. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to take him. I'm going to stick his butt up in the air and let the sun hit it. And I'm going to let my resin cure. And then when I get back, we'll do some dripping. We're back. It's been a few minutes and my resin is still not as thick as I want it. Okay. I'm kind of impatient, So also I know that if I just let it sit here for too long, without a thickener, and I just let it thicken up on its own in its pure state of just dye and resin, I feel it's gonna start to flash cure on me. I can't explain it, I don't know why, but I feel like I need to thicken it up myself. The cornstarch that I put in there acts as a thickener, okay? So it's not gonna change the speed that it cures. It's going to just make it thicker so that it doesn't move while it's curing. All right, now that my drip is nice and thick and it's still not cured to its fullest, we're gonna apply. We're gonna put a little bit on here, nice and slowly. You don't need to go too fast, because that's what I feel like I have to do sometimes. If it's curing too fast, I'm like, oh gosh, we gotta hurry. No. Slow it down. And while you're applying your drip and you're doing it nice and slow and nice and even, and you're getting the coverage all around the cup, keep spinning it and looking and paying attention to how your resin in your drip is behaving. You don't want to, have a nice giant glob running over, your cup. You want to stay in control of your drip. So applying your resin nice and slow and paying attention to how it's moving and the behavior is very important. This is a very tricky technique, but once you get it and once you know what works for you, it can be a lot of fun. Now, I have a habit of wanting to use all my epoxy. That is my toxic drip trait. I want to make sure that I'm not wasting any of my epoxy, because when you get a good drip and it's on there and you have a good viscosity or a good thickness to your drip, you want to make sure that you don't waste it. You're like, no, this is good drip. I can still drip some more. I want to put it all on there. But knowing when to stop dripping is probably the healthiest drip practice. What I do is I'll take a little bit of my paper towel and wrap it around my finger with a little bit of alcohol on there, and I'll clean that rim so that way when I set it on its head, the drip does not stick to the paper and then you get peaks and stuff, okay? No, you want a nice clean drip. I want to make sure that I'm doing this while it's still sticky. I'm just going to take some sprinkles with my wax pencil and I'm going to apply them strategically. And I'm flipping it upside down and putting it back on its head and paying attention to how much drip is actually dripping, okay? And I'm going to do this as long as it takes until that drip is nice and still. There is no more movement, okay? So if it takes you an hour of flip and flopping, then you do that. But because you don't want to walk away from this. If you walk away from this, you might come back to a drippy mess, okay? Make sure that before you walk away from it completely and you say this guy is done, it is not moving anymore. Okay, I think he's good. The drip is somewhat covering his face and it's not moving anymore. I can confidently walk away from this guy. Tomorrow I'll come back and we will fill the bottom of him. Okay, we are back. And now the fun begins. We get to put sprinkles and glitter and gummy bears, all kinds of fun stuff down here on the bottom. So I'm going to mix up some of my epoxy and I'm going to put it down to the side over here. While that's getting nice and thick and cured, we're going to pull out some of our goodies that we want to put down here in our base. I went over to Five Below and I grabbed some gummy bears to eat and to use in my project here. So you're probably wondering, why am I painting the bottom of this? I want to make sure that I have a very vibrant white base and it lets the colors pop out. For some reason, I don't know, in my head, I think that if I don't have a primed white base, then the shadows or the darkness is going to take away from the bright colors that I want to fill. So because I have such a big cavity here at the bottom, so I want to do this in stages. I know that I want a base of this epoxy just to keep everything from floating around or moving. So I'm using my Flynn Sisters Fast Cure because I know it's going to cure very fast and it's going to be nice and thick. I want to make sure that I have that down first, okay? That is what I'm going to stick my sprinkles to. I'm going to put some of my gummy bears. But again, I'm not going to use this as a flood coat. We'll get to that here in a second. Okay, now that I'm done with filling my cavity down here at the bottom with all my gummy bears and I have my sprinkles in there, I want to make sure that these gummy bears are not pushed up while the resin is curing. I want the gummy bears to stay in its place without them being shifted around as the epoxy cures. I'm going to put a piece of wood on top of this guy just to keep some weight down on there, just in case they do want to rise to the top. They're not going to. So let's go ahead, let's do that. And then we'll come back later on once it's cured and we will flood coat this bottom here. It's the next day and we're back and I'm very excited. Everything looks so perfect. I noticed that I'm missing a little bit of sparkle, so I'm gonna put some silver stars down on here just to give it a little bit more extra pop. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna flood coat this. The flood coat that I am using is gonna be crystal diamonds. And this is a very slow, thin curing epoxy. As you can see, it is super clear. It's very thin viscosity. So we don't have to worry about bubbles or anything like that. When this does cure, it's gonna cure so clear. As you can see right here, there doesn't look like there's a single bubble in there. It is super thin, super clear, and ready to go. Okay, once you're done with your flood coat, go ahead and just let him cure. After he's cured, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna give him one final coat of epoxy. And this is just gonna be my regular Flint Sisters epoxy. And I'm going to make sure that my drip and my sprinkles and everything is just one solid coat. After he is done, he will make his grand appearance. Let's see how it turned out. I am so happy with the way he looks. I think he's adorable. I think it turned out perfect. My daughter has already asked me if she could have him because she loves him so much. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Definitely leave me questions, comments down at the bottom. I have all my supplies and materials listed as well as some coupon codes for you. I hope you enjoyed this. Give me a thumbs up and I will be seeing you soon. Bye.